Hello, my friends. It's me, Coral. I'm back again. Look, I'm here. I'm here today because Rachel at the Shades of Orange, I will leave a link to her channel below because you should check her out. She does a lot of horror and sci-fi stuff. But she recommended that I make a list ranking the Stephen King books and like what I thought of them. And at first I was like, I don't know, maybe I should hold off until I read all of them. But then I was thinking about it and I was like, but it might be interesting if I rank them now before having read all of them, because it might be interesting to see how that changes as I read more of his stuff, read and reread. Because let me tell you, I have a list here. These are 28 books. Clearly not all of his books, because that man has written so many dang books. And these aren't even all the ones that I've actually read. These are just ones that I've read recently enough to like remember the plot line and have an opinion. Because there are some, like, let's see, for example, I know I've read Different Seasons. I know I've read Everything's Eventual more than once. I've read Rose Matter, and I know I've read Dolores Claiborne, and there's a couple other ones that I know I've read, but it's been so long now that I can't tell you what those are about, because I've been reading Stephen King books since I was like 10 years old, so I'm not sure what all of those are about. So these are just ones that I've read recently enough to where I can remember them, have an opinion on them, and I've ranked them. There's 28 here, like I said. And I also just want to say that this isn't a thing where you can change my mind about it. So if you have any thoughts that are like not pleasant about my opinions, you can just keep them to yourself, because I'm not shitting on anything someone else might like. I'm super happy if you like something more than I did, because why would I be upset about that? So just keep it to yourself. Like, go whisper it into your pillow if it's really bothering you. This is just my opinion and how I've ranked some of his books, okay? Okay. The first one that I want to talk about is actually one that I listened to as an audiobook this year, I think. Pretty sure. Anyways, that's Elevation. This is number 28. I just don't know why he needed to tell this story. I don't feel like I gained anything at all by reading it. That's why it's number 28. I'm not sure if this will ever be one that is ever ranked high for me, even when I eventually do finish all of his work. This one's never going to be ranked very high, because I just, like I said, I gained nothing from reading this. I'm not sure why this is a story that he really felt he needed to tell. There it is. Number 27, The Gunslinger. I just didn't like this book. I've read it 3 or 4 times, at least 3 times, and I've never liked it, not once. Number 26 is Gwendy's Button Box. This is another one where it's just like, it was fine. I don't think any of these, except for maybe Elevation, are ones that like I really didn't like. I just like, this was fine. It wasn't like, it didn't bring me, I don't know, it didn't make me think. It didn't, I don't know, it didn't grab me in any way. It was just a book and I read it and I was like, okay, now that's done. Like, I don't know. Number 25, people might be upset about this one. This is Salem's Lot. I just also didn't really care about it as I was reading it. I actually set it down for like 2 weeks before picking it back up again. I thought that maybe there would be a twist on like the vampire thing, but there wasn't. It was just like a straight up vampire book, and I don't know, it was just okay. It was fine. It was fine. Number 24 is Cell. This one I've read twice. Both times I was like, I mean, it's the same thing. It was just fine. I know I read the very beginning of it when it first came out, which was a long time ago. I must have still been in grade school. And I remember being like super freaked out with like the whole your cell phones making you act funny thing. Because this came out, you know, when cell phones were just beginning to be something where like, oh, now your parents have one finally, you know what I mean? And I don't know. I remember it freaking me out more when I was younger. However, as I've read it twice now as an adult, both times it's like, that's fine. What number is this? 23? 23 is Thinner. This is one of his books he wrote under Bachman. And it was also just fine. 22 would be The Wasteland. I just felt like not much happened in this giant book. This is over 600 pages, I think. And it was like, there's like 4 things that I can tell you that seemed important that happened, and that's just no fun. Number 21 is The Talisman. This also had the same problem that The Wastelands did. Well, actually, it's not exactly the same problem. I felt like this book was way too long, but a lot of stuff did happen in it. Like, the plot did, you know, take you somewhere, a lot of somewheres, maybe too many somewheres. Maybe that's the problem. I remember liking a lot of the beginning of it, but like halfway through, I'm like, oh my god, are they gonna fucking get there someday? And it took them a long time to get where they were going. A long, long time. Number 20 is Mr. Mercedes. This one was also just fine. I haven't read like a lot of his more recent stuff. This is maybe like one of when I started reading a lot again after I had my daughter, once I was done with my like too busy to do things teenager phase, you know what I mean? Too busy to be doing things like reading at least. This is like one of the first recent ones that I picked up of his, and it felt weird reading a like detective book written by Stephen King. I didn't think that there was anything really wrong with it, but I didn't think there was much that was like quite right about it. It was just fine. It's fine. It's fine. It's fine. It's all fine. It's fine. Number 19 is The Regulators. There were some aspects of this that I thought were really interesting. However, like the whole like TV characters becoming real life and killing people thing was a little too far-fetched and like not super interesting because it was too weird for me, I guess. I don't know. Number 18 is Skeleton Crew. There are a lot of collections that I've read by Stephen King that like are just fine, and in general I think most collections are just fine for me, because while sometimes there are some good ones, there are also a fair amount of just fine stories too, and I think that was the case in this as well. This did have The Mist, which I really do like. It had, what else? I think The Jaunt is in this one, and Grandma, which I like. Yeah, The Jaunt, Survivor Type, Beach World, I like those ones. Grandma's good too. But I mean, like I said, there are good ones in here, but there are also ones that's just like, okay, you know, it's fine. So this is number 18. Number 17 is The Eyes of the Dragon. This one is just a standard fantasy novel, really. It's like kings and queens. There's a bad guy, there's a good guy, there's a guy who doesn't know what's going on, and he gets to be king. There's, I think the best part of this was definitely Flag in this book, and I think he's the only reason why this book is as high as it is on my list, because like there's nothing wrong with this book. It was just like so very standard, except for Flag, because he is such a crazy motherfucker, and it's just really fun to read anything that any iteration of Randall Flagg is in. Number 16 is Carrie. What I liked most about Carrie is how Stephen King so he just really captured like being a teenage girl, you know? And I'm not sure how he did it because he was never a teenage girl. I think that's what I like most about Carrie. Obviously, this is just one that is, I don't know. Like, when you just say the name Carrie, everyone thinks of this book. Yeah, I don't know. Number 16. Number 15 is Gerald's Game. A lot of this was just fine. But there was, let's see, the last time I read this, I was reading it while my husband was working out of town in LA, and he was also working the night shift. So it was like I was very alone for a lot of the time, because even during the day when I was awake, he would have been asleep, and then at night he was working and I was sleeping some of the time, I guess. And there's a part in this book, I was reading it alone in the middle of the week at night, and it was so freaking spooky. This is definitely one that comes to mind when I think of King writing body horror, and that's why it is number 15 on this list. 14 is Firestarter. I think this also has, it has that problem where it's like, there's so much book here and like what really happened in it. It seemed like at times it wasn't very cohesive, but I really love Charlie in this, although she was a little too precocious, I guess, for my taste. She's only supposed to be like 8 years old, right? And she very much doesn't read like an 8-year-old, if you know what I mean. But this has one of my favorite villains of all time in here, John Rainbird, who was so crazy and like straight up evil. And I really enjoyed him in this book. Number 13 is another one that I listened to on audiobook maybe last year, and that is The Outsider. I really liked this. And I know this one maybe was a little bit polarizing because people didn't like the way that the like second half of the book went. But I really liked that supernatural aspect, and I think that there are a lot of his books that did that same thing. Like, where something seems like a normal problem, but then kind of delves into the supernatural, kind of has a supernatural twist on it, like Geralds Game a little bit, The Girl Who Loved Tom Gordon a little bit, and I mean, this is kind of the same thing. It's like a murder mystery, and along the way there is something maybe supernatural going on, and I liked that. I thought it was good. I still liked it. And living somewhere where there is a large Hispanic population, like the Kukui, is something that I've heard about before. So it was like really fun to see Stephen King kind of giving that story a little bit more life, and I liked it. Number 12 is The Dark Half. I just think that George Stark in this book is such a great character. He's just larger than life and almost cartoonish in a way. It's just like everything is so exaggerated. He's my favorite part of that book. Number 11 is It. And this one is just so quintessential for people who read King and enjoy King. And I'm willing to bet that this is high up on most people's list. It's just a really great coming of age story. It is very sinister at parts. I think my favorite part of this story, though, isn't necessarily Pennywise, but Henry Bowers and his crew. And I really like the dynamic of like these kids are in danger. The Losers Club, they're in danger, but like, what are they more in danger from? Is it from this supernatural force, or is it from the real life reality of like getting the shit beat out of you by a school bully? And I really like that about this book. Number 10 is Night Shift. And I know I just told you when I was talking about Skeleton Crew that usually short story collections don't get rated very high by me. But Night Shift was very good, and I can only think of like maybe 2 stories in here that weren't good in some way. Like, even the ones that weren't my favorite, I still liked reading them. Let's see. I'll tell you a couple of my favorites here. I know I really liked Gray Matter. I really loved I Am the Doorway. The Ledge, like, I was reading that. I remember reading it, like, it was so visceral, and I get this thing when I start to get very anxious where like my feet start to feel like they're asleep. Like I get this like fuzzy, staticky feeling in my feet, and sometimes it doesn't happen very often, but I started to get that as I was reading this book, and I was like, oh no, I need to like stop reading this right now because it was just making me so anxious. I also really love Quitters Inc., Children of the Corn. There's just so many good, there's so many good stories in this one. Number 9. This is also a very polarizing book, I think. And this is the Tommyknockers, and this is one that I've read. I've reread this a couple times because it's so good, and I really love what goes on in the little town of Haven, what these small town people get into. That's, I think, my favorite part of the story. It's just so, I don't know, it's so strange. This is the part where, like, it's really hard for me to, I mean, a lot of these in the middle, it was, like, kind of hard to be, like, it really came down to, like, did I like this more than this, or did I like this less than this? These top 8 here were also hard to, it was hard to sort through these because a lot of these, like when I rated them, were like 5 stars, so it became like a game of like, what did I like more than this, you know what I mean? So number 8 is Pet Sematary. This it lingers, and I think definitely being a parent reading it this last time made it really just fucking sad. And it's just a really great story. It has a lot of feeling and emotion in it. Same with number 7, Cujo. This also was just like a big fucking bummer, and on both ends, like a big fucking bummer for, I don't remember the characters' names in this. Shame on me. Tad and Donna. Is it Donna? It's a big fucking bummer for Tad and Donna, and it's a big, really fucking bummer for Cujo. And it's just a bummer story, but it's so good, and I really love this book. I need to reread that one soon. Number 6 is The Dead Zone. I don't see this one talked about a lot, which surprised me when I read this, because I was like, this is good. I think the only problem I had with this was that it seemed like 2 separate stories. Like, at first there was this like murder mystery plot, and then it was like, okay, that's over, but there's still half of the book left, and then, you know, it goes through another plot line, and it did seem a little just disjointed, but I just really loved the characters in this. Johnny Smith, he was just so likable and relatable, and just seemed like a genuinely good dude. Like, I'd like to call him my friend. And both kind of plot lines that there were both very interesting and engaging, and I flew through this book, and it was just really good. Number 5 is The Drawing of the Three. This so far is my favorite book that I've read out of the Dark Tower series. This is where we meet some of the people who are going to be Roland's companions, and it's just really neat to see their stories, how they deal with what their future is going to be like. And there's also the Lobstrosities, which have been my favorite weird creatures so far in the Dark Tower. Number 4 is The Shining. This is just really a spectacular book. It gets so very dark at the end. There's some really great body horror. The parts with the roque mallet is like still makes me curl my toes when I think about it. Danny is such a great character in this book. Wendy, I could like give a shit less about. She was just very, she's too, I don't know. I don't really like the way King wrote her, but Danny is so good. Watching Jack like spiral into insanity is so great, and I really, really love this book. Number 3 is The Girl Who Loved Tom Gordon. This one, it's probably rated so high, probably partially because of like the nostalgic value that this has for me, but I really do think it's a great book. It is kind of heartbreaking, and it makes you really super worried about Trisha, who's the main character. There is some really strange parts. I remember being like freaked out the first time I read this. I was young, but I think that's one of the first times that a book actually scared me. So it's a good one. Number 2. Number 2 is The Stand, and I will say I've never read the, what did you call it? The cut version? The edited version. I've only read the uncut, and maybe the more edited version would be somewhere different on my list. I don't know, but the uncut version is number 2 for me. This is just such a great good versus evil story. There are so many great characters in this. Randall Flagg's in it. So like I said, when I was talking about Eyes of the Dragon, he's just such a great character, and I love him in everything that he's in. Number 1 is The Long Walk. I borrowed my copy, my copy with just The Long Walk out to a friend. Hopefully I'll get that back. She read it and she liked it, so that's good. But this is the Bachman books, and this has A Long Walk in it, and it's by far, maybe not by far, I don't know. It is my favorite of Stephen King's works that I've read so far. It's a long-standing favorite of mine. I think until I read The Stand, actually, my top 2 were The Girl Who Loved Tom Gordon and The Long Walk. And The Long Walk is just so, I don't know, it's so character-driven and interesting, and I think that story just, it has to have really strong characters because they're literally just walking the entire book. So, I don't know. Somehow King made that good, and it's my favorite. And if you haven't read it, I just read it, okay? It's not straight up horror. It's more of like the horrors that man can conflict on other man's, you know what I mean? Humans are just like really awful. That is my list of 28 of the Stephen King books that I've read recently enough to tell you about. Someday, I don't know when, I'll make a list with more. Maybe I'll wait till I read like 15 more, 10 more or something. I don't think I'll wait till I finish them all, because I honestly don't know when that will be. He has written so many books. But yeah, if you'd like to tell me what some of your favorites are, as long as you aren't going to be a butthole about it, I'd really love to hear what you think. I don't know why people who love Stephen King can get so defensive when other people don't like it. It's a little bit ridiculous. So please, I'm not telling you that your favorites are bad just because I didn't like them as much as you do. So if you want to, like a normal person, want to tell me what some of your favorites are, I'd love to hear, even if they weren't on this list. Like, what are your 3 favorites? Especially if it's like, if they're if they're books that I haven't read yet, maybe I'll be motivated to get to them more quickly. That's all I have for you though. Thank you so much for watching. I need to drink like 10 glasses of water after talking for this long. Leave me a comment below. Thank you so much for watching, and I will see you later.